And good morning to you. This is I Need Coffee, your weekly BC review. It is episode 163 for the lovely date of Friday, April 18th, 2025. Cheers. And I have a surprise at the very end. While getting ready, I was perfectly fine. 5 minutes before getting ready, I start coughing. Randomly. I don't get it. So anyway, on with the show. This is going to be a turbo edition. Need to get it done, get it out, and be on my way. You'll understand why. So El fin de semana, the weekend, homeowner's paradise, right? Cleaning, maintenance, chores. I have a pool. If you do not have a pool and you think you want a pool, let me just let you know you do not want a swimming pool. Just trust me on that. I do not have the luxury of having a pool guy. So I grew up with a pool. I know how to maintain a pool, unfortunately, and I am stuck, therefore, maintaining a pool, which means my daughters are stuck maintaining a pool because they are my kids, and that's their job, is to help maintain the pool. So we pulled the pool cover off, cleaned it, scrubbed it down, got the leaves, dirt, algae off of it, and it is ready for the spring. I still need to clean the pool itself, which is a nice warm shade of green at the moment, but that will have to wait for a week until I get back from vacation. And turns out that I'm an urban loquat farmer. I think my wife stuck a couple branches in the ground from a loquat tree. And if you're familiar with the loquat tree, it grows like a giant weed. You literally just cut off a branch, stick it in the dirt, and it will grow and turn into these massive trees that now arch over my swimming pool and drop leaves and fruit and detritus into my pool and clog up my filter. We have a bumper crop this year despite trimming the trees back, and we actually have neighbors come over with boxes and we fill boxes of the fruit that they love. Apparently the fruit originated in China, and it is quite a robust fruit tree if you're interested in urban fruit trees. And as you'll see there, you may notice a problem with my garage door. I was trying to figure out, why won't it open? The light comes on, it clicks, makes noises, but nothing ever happens. Well, it turns out that gap in the spring means it broke. So yeah, that was my Sunday night. I was like, oh, okay. But I sent a message to my garage door guy, came on Monday, fixed it, bam, boom, all done. So it was a good weekend, productive, and yeah, I survived. And I think there was an F1 race. I don't remember what city it was in. Anyway, it was a pretty good race, if I recall. Lots of chaos, lots of mixing around, and unusual. So that was fun. So, weekly projects, proyectos semanales. El Salvador office electrical rewire. Boy, you have not had fun until you open up the walls or ceiling of a house in El Salvador. I tell you. I thought it was bad at my house here in California. 1973 vintage house with aluminum wiring. No. El Salvador tops it big time. You just never know what you're going to find in there. So we're on that adventure. We received the binary stream MEM runtime packages so that we can use pipelines in Cosmo Alpaca with our projects that involve multi-entity management. Now, this is brand new to us, so we're trying to figure out, we don't know what to do with this thing or where to put it or how to use it Alpaca, so we need to ask for help. But we'll learn it. At least the first step is we got the runtime packages. So yeah, if you do a lot of development with binary stream MEM, they do have runtime packages available. Submit a support request, and then you got to figure out how to incorporate that into your pipelines to do the full song and dance with next minor, next major. And if you don't know what pipelines, next minor, next major mean, and you're a partner doing AL development, I would urge you to, with utmost urgency, to understand what those three things mean at a minimum. Because if you don't know what that means, you are in deep trouble. If you're an ISV and you don't know what that means, you might want to just close your doors and find a new line of business because you are way out of your league. Yeah, lots of conversations going on about that right now. And we have a customer statement oddity that came through a support ticket, and we think we figured it out, and now we're a little puzzled why the customer made the request. Fun times. Then we had a customer with PTEs just magically installed in their production environment. We think a user, actually one was an AppSource app. We think a user somehow installed an AppSource app. So we've gone back, locked down permissions to try and prevent that. No one will fess up to it. But then an ISV, we don't know how it got installed, but an ISV apparently installed a PTE in the customer's production environment. And my only guess as to how they did that, because we don't think they have a login, is via the BC Admin API, which we think they do have access. No bueno, folks. When an ISV is shoving PTEs in a customer's production environment without asking, yeah. And external API integrations risk clause, more on that. And El Salvador work vacation next week. I am looking forward to that. On Monday, lunes, like I said, El Salvador adventures. I call these the El Salvador wire nuts. We opened up the ceiling to run some wires that had outlets to the house, and this is what we found. They had taken the wrapper off of some building materials, cut the plastic, and instead of using wire nuts or any other electrical connectors, if you're in North America, you're probably familiar with what we call wire nuts. No. That's old school. Apparently, you take the plastic packaging from the building materials and you tie knots around the bare copper wire instead of using electrical wire nuts. I'm looking to get these UL certified. I think it's a great invention. It's, it's reduce, reuse, recycle, right? So we found this in the ceiling of our office, and that necessitated ripping out every single electrical wire that exists in the house. Literally everything is gone. We are rewiring the entire house. Good times. And then I got this notification on multiple cell phones, and it's pretty cool. Apparently this is a brand new notification. USGS in the US, I don't know if it's California specific, nationwide, what the scope is, but I got this first on the Android. Actually, it's Graphene OS on a Pixel phone. I got it about 10 seconds before the quake. And I'd never seen this before. So I'm looking at this phone like, is this a prank, a hoax, a mistake? And then the house started shaking. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, now that I know what it is, I know what to do. But I was like, what? And so the house started shaking, and then 10 seconds after the earthquake, my iPhone got the same notification. So clearly there's some latency issues. So very interesting though. It worked well. I'm pretty pleased with it. One of the few things that, one of the annoying messages that pop in that I don't mind getting. So that was Monday. I have no idea what work I got done because I think we were buying electrical supplies and running around like chickens to try and get that fixed. And Tuesday, martes. Excuse me. BC job queue posting. Yes, but no. Everyone says BC can post batches automatically. You just set up a job queue entry. I'm sorry, folks. If you consider that an acceptable solution for customers, have your customers call me, and happy to provide a better solution. I think it's horrible. Yes, technically, you could theoretically have BC post transactions using a job queue entry, but I think it is suboptimal, as I like to say. First of all, a partner contacted me with this question, like, oh, BC can't post warehouse transfer orders. I'm like, okay, we'll look into it. Well, it turns out that partner had tried to configure a job queue entry using a code unit for posting transfer orders. Apparently that was in the list. So we found that and said, oh, that must be it. But if you know anything about using code units in job queue entries, you know there's just one parameter field and it's not supported and it basically doesn't work. So while researching this, we thought we would have to do a wrapper to get this to work. But then I realized, well, let's just look at the report. And there it is. Sure enough, batch post transfer orders report 5707. And you're thinking, cool, that's all you need, right? No, because what happens when this job queue entry runs? It says success. I succeeded. And you're like, cool. It posted on my transfer orders, right? No, they all failed. Why? Because they had posting errors. Does the job queue entry tell you that? No. Can you look in the job queue entry to see it? As far as I could tell, no. Like you have no detail from that posting process. I don't see which transactions succeeded, failed. I was unable to find a way to see the posting errors, so I do not consider this an acceptable solution. So we're going to be developing an app that does this. Makes it easier to handle automated posting. And then, geez, come on. So we got a support request from a customer saying, last month I printed my customer statements and it did not show unapplied payments. This month I run the customer statements and it does show unapplied customer payments. And we researched this and we're like, okay, we got to figure all this out. We didn't know it because a customer upgraded from 25.1 to like 25.4 in the last month. So is that the issue? The customer is using MEM. That complicates things. The customer is using a custom statement that we did the report layout for. And the customer is using a report extension that we created in order to add a field or two to the customer statement. So lots of complicating factors there. So we didn't know where to look. And we're like, okay, what would cause unapplied payments to suddenly appear on a statement? We had no idea. So we're doing testing. I'm on a call with David in Berlin, El Salvador, and we're doing testing. And he's like 25.1, the customer unapplied payments show up on the statement. Like that was his base case to test with, and they are showing up. It's like, wait a minute. So we did more tests and we realized that's the default as far as we could tell. As long as the unapplied payment or open payment or applied payment is within the statement date range, it will appear on the statement. We go back and look at the customer's first run, and it was dated from January 1st, 2025 onward. We look at his report parameter screenshot he sent for April 2023, January. We're like, well, yeah, you backdated your start date of your statements. Of course it's going to show open payments. He's like, but it didn't do it last month. So we suspect that's base case for Business Central, and he did not review every single customer statement, or there just was no open unapplied payment available to be on the statement. That's our guess. So we're just asking internally for some sanity checks. Does the standard Business Central customer statement show unapplied payments? So we need to go back to vanilla BC, vanilla statement, and verify that behavior exists. And if so, then the customer is going to say, well, they shouldn't appear on the statement. Why did you guys screw it up? So you can't win. And I suspect that's where it's going to go, that they do not want to show unapplied payments on the customer statement. And now we have to go back to our requirements discussions. And if you were attending my session in Las Vegas at Directions NA about a $1 million lawsuit, you would have heard me say the phrase requirements traceability matrix. And if you have never heard of that term and never created that document before in your life, welcome. I don't know anyone else who has, but at this point in time, I would love to see a requirements traceability matrix for this customer during our requirements phase, where we determined whether or not unapplied customer payment should appear on the statement or not. I'm guessing that was not a requirement, but I'll find out. I need to dig into that. And moving on, third-party apps and APIs. Holy cow. This has been battering us. And I finally just came to the epiphany. It's like, okay, stop. I realized we need to deal with this, make it explicit. And I saw this comic on Twitter by workchronicles.com. And the manager asked the worker, what's the ETA for the project? And the worker says 1 week. And the manager says, let's target a half a week. And the worker says, actually, I meant I'll share the ETA after 1 week. And this is a constant issue that we have in the consulting world. You have 2 phone calls with a prospect. They say, I love Business Central and these 17 third-party products that we want to use, warehousing, payroll, manufacturing, projects, who knows, taxes, whatever, reporting, financial analysis. And they say, great, how much, when can it be delivered? Customizations, integrations, you name it, right? So after 2 phone calls, you are expected to be clairvoyant and crystal ball and know all the answers. You're experts in this, right? How hard can it be? You're supposed to prepare a proposal, timeline, budget, detailed project plan, requirements analysis, you name it, design docs in 2 phone calls. How hard can it be? How much? When? So maybe we could say that might be possible with Core BC, but we are learning, and I have learned through much pain, anything involving a third-party app, third-party API, anyone outside of Core BC, even Core BC we know is just a field of landmines. Anything outside of that is just simply unknown. If I've never worked with this ISV solution, this AppSource app, this third-party SaaS service, I'm not going to make any promises about their ability to deliver, their functionality, whatever. That's up to the customer to choose that product or service or API or whatever. So we are adding a clause to our master services agreement and all of our statements of work for a third-party products disclaimer, explicitly saying that the client understands that any third-party products carry additional risk, and all of those may affect cost estimates, delivery timelines, unforeseen issues, etc., and that we're essentially disclaiming responsibility for all of those, because I am now aware of at least 2 lawsuits against partners, in part due to misunderstandings or overly optimistic assumptions about the functionality that those services or third-party products provided, as well as, in one case, poor support from the ISV. That the service provider, third-party service provider, actually was so bad that it resulted in the customer initiating the lawsuit against the partner. And the partner's like, dude, I'm in the same boat as you, but the partner gets blamed. So we now have this clause. I may run it by a lawyer, beef it up, and we are also going to put a more extensive clause of this type in all of our statements of work, because we are getting nailed by these third-party APIs. They say, yeah, we have an API, and then you dig into it, and it is a mess. Absolute mess to deal with that third-party API. So we've had delays and budget overruns as a result of that. Moving on to Wednesday, miércoles. I've been using Perplexity a lot, and the team in El Salvador has as well. And it's like, why are we getting this error in Business Central? Where is this setting in this application? And we just use Perplexity. We no longer use Google, DuckDuckGo, anything else. And we used to use Central Q, but we ran into some hallucinations there. Sorry, Dimitri, but we have now switched almost exclusively to Perplexity. And after doing a bunch of Perplexity queries and asking questions, including the third-party clause that I just showed you, Perplexity helped me kind of craft the language around that. It's like, hey, you've run out of your free trials. I'm like, fine. So I subscribe to it for, I think it's $20 a month or $200 for a year. So I subscribe for $200 for the year, like it already paid for itself. So I'm now using Perplexity Pro for my general knowledge, AI search and finding things out. I had a problem with OneDrive on Windows 11. It just stopped working. I couldn't use it in File Explorer. I asked Perplexity. It was better than any other search result I found on the web. It told me exactly what to do, followed its instructions, fixed the super obscure problem with OneDrive not working anymore. So awesome. More than paid for itself just in the time savings and hassles it saved me. Ronald and I have confirmed in the third tenant that if you try to use Azure Key Vault in a Power Automate flow, the permissions you assign to that Azure Key Vault do not sync immediately over to the Power Platform. Whatever that process is, it seems that Azure Key Vault is propagating or somehow copying or replicating those permissions over to something that the Power Platform can access, maybe via Graph API, I don't know. But it takes, we estimate, 5 days for the Azure Key Vault permissions to propagate over to Power Automate. So this is the third time we've tested this, third time the exact same results. You get an error message saying that the user does not have, the client does not have permissions to perform the operation on the Key Vault, and it says check your access policies. Well, we've done this 3 times, so we know the score. So now, for the third time, we are waiting, and we'll try to remember to check to see how long it takes. But we believe it's 5 days is kind of the safe zone when it should propagate. So Power Automate is becoming more and more disappointing, and we're more and more reluctant to even offer it as a possible solution for BC integrations, at least advanced ones like those involving an API key where you may need to use Azure Key Vault. BC approval workflow notifications. Hallelujah. Finally, on the 97th try, Ronald and I finally figured it out. We finally got an error that we researched, and we discovered a fundamental mistake we were making. We were trying to use only user mailboxes. And from what we found, if you are going to use the kind of default shared mailbox in Business Central, it must be I think it's called a shared mailbox in Office 365. You cannot use a user mailbox in Business Central as the shared default mailbox based on our testing. It just doesn't work. It gives you send on behalf of permission errors, even though you have given send on behalf of permissions. Once we set up the shared mailbox, I gave Ronald shared on behalf, send on behalf of, or send as permissions, instantly worked perfectly. Like, we have spent weeks trying to figure out what is going on here, and we think we finally figured out, and I got the notifications on the Business Central workflow notifications. So now that we have our understanding for our test environments, we need to go back to this customer who's having this issue and try to figure out what's not configured right. And it could be the mailbox issue. It could be something in BC. We don't know. So now we have 1% confidence in our ability to support, troubleshoot, and deal with the approval workflow notifications in Business Central. And in the artificial intelligence world, you may be super impressed by these super cool new AI LLMs and wizardry. It turns out a group of people, I didn't look to see like what the background is or how they document or what their organization is, but on Twitter, now known as X, whatever, there is this account called Transluce AI, TRANSLUCE AI, and they tested a pre-release of GPT-03, little o3, and they have this long thread showing, they did this study apparently with hundreds of testers, human testers, and they found that ChatGPT blatantly, like just outrageously fabricates completely fake data, passes that off as an answer, completely fabricates the entire story about how this data was created, and then lies about how the made-up answer was generated by it. Like absolute, like chronic, just totally lost it mental lying. And so what they asked it to do was generate a large prime number. I forget the specific request. They said, can you generate a certain super large prime number? And then they said, okay, great. You just gave me what you believe is a prime number. How did you obtain that? And then how did you know how long it took? How many milliseconds it took to generate that prime number? Where did you run the code? And it says, I measured it myself outside of ChatGPT and then copied the numbers into the answer. It says it used the equivalent of a 2021 MacBook Pro with 32 gigs of RAM, and it lists this machine specs. The only caveat is the researchers know that ChatGPT cannot do this. They happen to know it does not have the capability, tool sets, or any of the tools it references to generate this particular prime number. And so they then push back on this, and GPT keeps digging itself into a hole with its absolute just outrageous lies. It's just making stuff up left and right. And then they say, well, you realize this isn't a prime number. It's divisible by 3. And it says, oh, I evidently copied or mistyped the number wrong while rerunning the test. I'm sorry. And my previous answer contained a transcription error. Sorry about that. And then they asked, well, how could you possibly mistype it? You said you ran tests to verify it. And it just keeps stepping over its own lies. So really crazy thread. Check it out. It's Transluce AI. Just absolutely wild thread there. Okay. iOS and Android. So Android, for once, has a feature that is catching up with iOS. And, stepping back. iOS. First, iOS has a new release 18.4.1 because they found a 0-day, which this is pretty crazy. If you stream audio on an iOS device, and they list the specs here, processing an audio stream with maliciously crafted media may result in arbitrary code execution. Apparently, this is a 0-day that was actively exploited against targeted iPhone users. And, presumably these are, political figures, government people, military, you name it, or, journalists in certain countries. But somehow someone detected this. And there's an organization that helps journalists and other people determine if they have vulnerability on their phone, and they help reverse engineer it. I didn't look to see who reported this, but this was published on April 16th, CV 2025 31201 and 31200. It's pretty wild. Just streaming an audio file can result in exploit of the iOS device. And then Android has finally, a few years after iOS, for once, Android does something that iOS already has. Android apparently has implemented an auto reboot after 3 days. And iOS implemented this a while back, apparently to thwart either stolen, confiscated, or devices taken by, say, governments or whoever who are looking to implement cracking software, Celebrite, or other means to try to extract data from those phones. And it is speculation, but the thought is that a reboot will either interrupt the cracking process or will wipe the memory of any encrypted data that may have been stored in memory as a result of a passcode entry. So that is good news there. Próximos eventos, upcoming events. Coming up soon, in a week no less, we have Color Cloud, April 24th in Hamburg, Germany, colorcloud.rocks. DynamicsCon, see you in a few weeks, May 13th through 16th in Chicago, dynamicscon.com. Make sure to register. You can still register if you need a discount code. Scour the web, contact DynamicsCon and say, hey, tough times. Give me a discount code. I believe they still have a couple of discount codes available. Dynamics Minds, May 26th through 28th in Slovenia, dynamicsminds.com. I am told on good authority that is the hippest, coolest conference in the world at the moment. That is at a beachfront resort in Slovenia. And I believe Tanya and Shannon will be there, among others, among other hip people. Of course, I will not be there because I am not hip enough. Summit NA, October 20th through 23rd in Orlando, summitna.com. And I apparently need to be there because we will be hosting the BC Bash once again this year, which is the party to be at in Orlando. And on Thursday, we had our first coordinated internal DevOps pull request. Franklin's been working on a few projects, and he submitted a pull request for, it was a PTE, a small PTE, but we finally got that configured, worked out all the crazy permission issues, all the crazy Windows credential caching issues, all the crazy VS Code credential caching issues. I swear we ran into every problem imaginable just trying to get Franklin in El Salvador to be able to work with DevOps and clone and then do a commit and a PR. But we worked through all of them. We turned on Azure DevOps notification, and the pull request was processed, reviewed, and submitted. We still have some configuration we need to do in DevOps to automatically merge and delete the old branch, but it's looking good. So I got those notifications Thursday morning, and bueno. And you may notice an airplane at LAX. That is my ride, because tonight, Thursday night, yes, I'm cheating right here. Thursday night, I fly to El Salvador with my family, and I join my partner in crime, Ms. Tanya Henderson, in El Salvador for a week. We're going to spend 3 days in Berlin, El Salvador, see our office under construction, hang out in Berlin, meet our E4CC English scholarship recipients, and have a good time there. Maybe we'll see a cow, a horse, and a chicken while we're there. And assessing ISV apps. I had a call with a prospect, and they're just looking at BC and finding out if we can help them. And, we're doing the song and dance as a prospect. And one of the things they asked about is they said, hey, we use this e-commerce platform called BigCommerce. Have you heard of it? And I'm like, nope, sorry. Like, there are so many commerce platforms out there. I haven't kept track. And so they said, is there an integration with BC? And I looked on AppSource. I was like, okay, let's check. Well, it turns out there's like 9 or 10 listed. And I was like, well, let's take a look at these. And they said, how do we evaluate this? And so this is a question back to you. How do you evaluate AppSource apps when there's 10 or more of them? And so I just walk the customer or prospect through my process. First of all, I look at who is it. I don't know who Dynamics eShop is. I don't know who most of the vendors are in AppSource, so that didn't help. They claim to have this connector for Business Central. It is a free trial, so I told the prospect that was a good sign. It appears to be an AppSource app that can be downloaded and installed in a sandbox only, of course. So I was like, that's good. But then I saw the ratings. I was like, 22 ratings, that's highly unlikely for a Business Central app. And sure enough, I look here and it is the G2 ratings. And I think this is the worst mistake Microsoft has made in the AppSource app store. I don't know why they did that, whose bright idea that was. Maybe G2 paid them. I don't know. I don't know why Microsoft would do it, because those, as far as I can tell, based on my experience, those are just absolute junk. It's like shareware and freeware and all sorts of random garbage. Who knows? So there's 22 ratings on G2 for this company. It's nothing to do with Business Central as far as I can tell. And there are 0 in the Microsoft Marketplace. So I told the prospect, ignore anything that says G2, useless, it's just noise. And it almost makes me suspicious because I don't trust those reviews. They don't seem valid, real, whatever. Hard to know what they are. Then I told the customer, another thing you can look at is information about where the app is allowed. And in this particular case, this company, with this connector at least, eConnect for BigCommerce, was only available in the United States. I don't even think it listed Canada. I was like, actually, it may sound like a downside for some. For me in the United States, that's a good thing because they are limiting the scope of their focus and their support. Because any company that claims to offer global support for a Business Central AppSource app, I'm sorry, like the chances of them being able to effectively support Europe, North America, South America, Asia, and Africa is right around 0, right? It's just way too hard between languages and time zones and everything else. You can try. I just don't know how people do a good job. Like, it's hard enough trying to schedule a call from US and Europe, let alone coordinate long-term support. I mean, maybe it's possible, but I thought that was a good sign. It's only available to the United States, so that's good. And then there was a small warning sign, and that is the version 1005. Now, let me know how you version your AppSource apps or PTEs. We use Cosmo Alpaca, so the version numbering we get out of our configuration, I don't know if that's the default, is something like 24.0.5.0 or 25.0.3.0. Alpaca automatically versions based on the major version number, 24, 25, whatever, and I think it's the time of the release pipeline run, and then it automatically increments the version number, so 25.0.7.0. And so I know that when I look at one of our PTEs or AppSource apps, I'm like, okay, I know that came out of Alpaca, all looking good. When I see 1005, I don't know if that's ALGO for GitHub. If that is not ALGO for GitHub and they are hand numbering that, I would assume they are not using pipelines, which would not make me happy, and I would tell the customer to be very cautious of that. Let me know. How do you version your PTEs? How do you version your AppSource apps? I should restate that. How do your pipelines version your AppSource app and PTEs automatically? And it better be automatically, because the build pipelines, the release pipelines should do that for you. I don't think people should be hand numbering. Like, if it's there, just have the pipelines do it. That's just me, though. Summit NA roadshows. Oh my gosh, Washington, D.C. has flown by. Look at that. Lo siento. Toronto on April 29th, Minneapolis on May 1st, Columbus, Chicago, and Philadelphia in June. Double check your dates at dynamicscommunities.com, summit-roadshow. Okay, and Friday. Happy Friday. Have a drink. And when I go to El Salvador, I always send my advanced team because they got to scope things out. They got to get things ready, roll out the red carpet, prep my, my private airstrip. You know how it is, So that is the coast of El Salvador on the far left. And I have these photos, compliments of my lovely partner in crime, Tanya Henderson. She arrived in El Salvador. She flew out Thursday night, arrived Friday morning in order to prepare for my arrival. Actually, no, it just worked out the way that tickets were much, much cheaper for her to go a day earlier. So she has already arrived, checked into the Quality Inn Aeropuerto San Salvador. Actually, it's a really nice, beautiful hotel. And she is hanging out by the pool. She is chilling. She tried to ride on the unicorn, but apparently that didn't work out well. So she gave up on that. She had a great desayuno típico with some chilaquiles. And then she's working outside by the pool. And she is waiting for me to arrive. So we're going to swap some luggage and head out to Berlin with a crew of 10 people, folks. Who would have thought when I went on this insane midlife crisis adventure into El Salvador and started this zany thing called ERP Center of Excellence, that I would be dragging 10 Americans into a little town on the side of a volcano called Berlin, El Salvador, where we now have a full office, 4 full-time interns, learning Business Central, and just going to town on the ERP world. So that is what is up on Friday, and I will be driving out to Berlin, El Salvador on Friday morning, which is why I'm not actually here right now. This is a pre-recorded live stream being rebroadcast to you. So thank you, loyal viewers, for watching. So right now, at this moment, I am on my way to Berlin, El Salvador in a luxurious van that Ronald, thank you very much, arranged for us to meet us at the airport, pick up me and my family and all of our luggage, and drive to Berlin, El Salvador, which is about a 2.5, 3 hour drive from the airport. But we do still have an excellence update. And that is the full rewiring of our office. And you will see the photo on the left. You will see helter-skelter electrical wires, no conduit, mighty sketchy. And I'm guessing, who knows when this house was built? I think it might have been after the 70s, maybe the 80s. I don't know. But yeah, just wires all over the place. You saw the Salvadoran wire nuts that we found in the ceiling. And so we have a pretty good electrician there. He says, rip everything out. So he literally removed every single wire in the house, and every single switch box, electrical outlet box was literally ripped out of the wall, concrete walls. He replaced them all with new plastic boxes, ran all new blue conduit. That's the Salvadoran version of conduit that is used there. So everything is being redone properly, all new wiring, everything. So it's going to be pretty flash, as my New Zealand friend says. And yeah, we're going to have extra outlets in all the rooms so we can actually plug things in. We're going to have outdoor lights, outdoor outlets. We're going to have death showers, electrical shower heads in the showers, which are always fun. Haven't died yet. So yeah, that's what's going on. And that is painfully expensive, but we just didn't have an alternative. We needed extra outlets, and this was the only option. We just had to rip everything out. So Q&A. I'm not here, so I can't answer your questions. So say hi in the comments, but talk amongst yourselves, because I'm going to be heading to El Salvador to Berlin, have some desayuno, enjoy the beautiful streets of Berlin and the beautiful vistas from Entre Veraneras Hotel. That's where Tanya's staying. And then this is the volcano outside of, I don't know if that was from San Miguel or Berlin, but then there is the horse where I stayed at the house. And then I think that's Frank, the rooster that crows every single morning. And you want to like just, have a talk with Frank there. But yeah, that's where I'm headed. So I am already there by the time you see this. So have a nos vemos, as they say, and have a good Friday. Have a good weekend. Cheers. Live from El Salvador. Okay. Adios.